he also tried to steal the girlfriend of Sonny, the boxer.
Sonny Liston?
Yeah. And they were at the dance thing that was being held by Frank Sinatra. And Sonny Liston's came in with a gorgeous girl. And my buddy went over there and tried to pick up on the girl.
He's brave.
Yeah, and Sonny invited him outside. So he used to be a boxer himself.
Oh,
so
okay.
Before Sonny could say a word, he decked him. And
sneak attack.
Yeah. So when my VA guy, who was also a retired captain in the Navy from his, and he would tell all of the adventures, and he attended a lot of the Frank Sinatra then when they had their group together, the Rat Pack and stuff, so he knew all those guys. And if you go to the China Lake Air Facility there, outside of it, there is a statue of a guy in a spacesuit, and that statue has a memorandum to this guy.
Oh, really?
And I'm trying to think of his name. I have his name at home. And I'm not sure if he's still alive because I've lost track of all of the guys that I met 2 years ago in San Diego with. They had to disbar the meetings and stuff because of the virus. So we've lost track of the 42 guys I used to meet with every Friday.
You still got a mind like a steel trap.
Yeah, well, I would meet with these guys, and we had astronauts, we had Blue Angels, we had Air Force demonstration flight team, we had the Michelin balloon pilot, and he took some of the guys for a ride on that over the ball games and stuff. We had the pilots that fly for the sheriff's office in San Diego that came in and talked to us and stuff. And we had a guy that was doing exactly what you're doing and putting them in the
National Archives?
Yes. And he had a way of recording them and everything and registering them there so that anybody in the future could go there and get one.
Good idea.
Yeah, but he died before he got to me. He was only taking the guys that were 100 plus or in the 90s, late 90s. And at that time frame, I was in the early 80s. So
you weren't old enough.
Yeah, I wasn't old enough to. I asked raised my hand one day after I joined the group about 10 years ago, and I said, "How many guys here are over 80?" And about 15 guys raised their hands. And I said, "How many are over 90?" And about 10 of them raised their hand. I said, "We got anybody that's over 100?" 3 of them raised their hand.
No kidding.
One was 103 and 2 of them were 101. And of course they died, but the 103-year-old was a hard hat diver, and the SEAL team would bring him to the meeting and then pick him up and take him home. And he would tell his stories of hard hat diving and stuff. So that was a phenomenal group that we had there. We always had some guest speaker that these guys knew or were acquainted with. We had a retired Marine officer who flew for the airlines and was still flying for the airlines, but he was a very senior pilot, so he only took 2 flight trips to get his total flight time for the month. But he was on contract to DOD to run their drone program. And he told us stories about what he did with the drones. And he showed us a credit card that he could control 50 airplanes or 50 drones with. And he told us about launching 50 drones right off the coast there, off of Camp Pendleton, and controlling his 50 drones. These are little small drones with a 7.5-pound weapon. And they were dummy weapons. And it could kill anything within a range of like 50 feet. So they set up a company of Marines up on they have a landing area about 10 miles north of San Diego, where they land the ships that are the air float ships that come in. And they put a company of Marines ashore there to shoot at this guy's drones. And he launched 50 drones at them. Mm-hmm. And they had their M16s, and they fired, a whole company fired all of their weapons and emptied them. They only shot 2 drones down. And they were lucky shots because the drones had the capability of sensing a bullet coming at them and avoiding it. But they did get lucky and shot 2 of the 40. They had 48 that got through to them and stood over the top of them.
Wow. I mean, that's like Skynet Terminator territory.
Exactly. And we asked them, do the Chinese and Russians have it? And he said, oh yeah, they had it before we had it. Because they go to the universities with all their students, they pay the university, and they get anything developed by the university back to China or to Russia. And that kills getting our stuff out into the universities, and we're third in line for it. Now,
God help us.
Yeah. Those are the kind of things we talked about at these different meetings and stuff, you know, and what we could do about it, you know.
This is the underbelly.
Yeah. So, and the political graft that goes on in the political end of the world when you're trying to buy equipment and stuff. The Navy created the 1520 community. Now, the 1520 community, I touched on it earlier in my speeches and stuff, that the 1520 community was set up in the late 50s because we were buying airplanes, and when you buy an airplane, we were sending pilots and stuff to do it. And the pilots were making the decisions, and the decisions that were being made never included the maintenance aspect of it and the follow-on equipment that would be needed to support those airplanes. Mm-hmm. In other words, they would get from Congress a packet of money, and they would say with that packet of money, and we played a game called Monopoly that we created as 1520s. And when you play this game, you took the packet of money, and from that, you could buy all the airplanes and have no money left for the support equipment. Or you could buy all of the airplanes and have no parts replacement. Mm-hmm. And you learned as 1520s how this process all worked and how to work it into when you ask Congress for the money. Because if you look at the time frames and over the years how we bought airplanes, including sometimes today, they only fund the number of airplanes by the number of airplanes they're going to buy and the number they're going to sell to the foreign countries. That amount then determines the packet of money. They then have to go in to the overrun, because once you put the airplane in production, all of these other things all of a sudden have to have the parts. They have to have the yellow equipment. When I say yellow equipment, I mean the air start units, the power units for electrical power to power them, the air conditioning units to plug into them, and the units to download all of their readouts so that they can determine what went wrong with the gear and stuff. And that's always then a huge cost that comes up that Congress says, why wasn't that in the package? Well, nobody was on the board to do any of that before they created the 1520s. Now, when a guy fails in the pilot, let's say he's going in to be a pilot and physically he gets disqualified. Well, to get into the pilots, you got to have a degree of something. And usually they have math or they have an engineering degree, and that's the guys that the 1520s want. They take those guys that were rejects for pilots and they give them a path. And the path is the same thing like an LDO. Only they don't have to go enlisted or anything. They go in right as an ensign, 1520. They learn their trade for a little while, and then they have to make a decision. Do they want to go into the engineering phase of it, or do they want to go into the maintenance phase of it? Now, if they go into the engineering phase, they groom them to write these contracts or be part of the group that goes there when they're negotiating the different pieces of equipment or airplanes or anything else. Mm-hmm. So that gives us then a base of educated type guys that have some fleet experience and that are engineers to put into those meetings and stuff.
Wow.
Now, the maintenance guys, they send out to the fleet, and guys like me, LDOs and stuff, usually a squadron gets an LDO and they get a 1520 maintenance guy. And they get them as an ensign or a JG. So the 1520 is there to educate them because the LDO is forced out at 30 years. Usually he can't get the commander, and he usually is forced out mandatorily at 38 years, or 28 years, before he gets to the 30-year gate. I was lucky. When I hit the 29th year, they told me I would be forced out at 30. And everybody pushed me to apply for 1520. And they don't, in 1520, there's no waivers. Nothing for, you have to have an engineering degree, you have to have no medical defects and everything else, because they know they're going to pick you up for the next 10 or 15 years. Well, they waived my deaf ear, they waived my medical, they picked me up without a degree, and somehow I got picked up as a 1520. That opened the gate to 41 years. It started my whole career all over, brand new.
Oh.
And that's why, as I went up to commander, my competition were all of these guys that I trained getting there. So when the selection came up, I was looking at the same guys that I knew that had been there for the last 12 years, and they were going to be my competition. And they all had engineering degrees, they all had their service time, and they had all had a chance to prove themselves. So when they gave me the opportunity to punch my ticket for captain,